Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast. This is Chad Hyams, and I'm joined today, well, as I look across the room, I'm joined today by somebody a little different, much better looking across the room than I usually look at when I'm looking at Ben or Bob. But because of the topic today, they both ran away. Well, I shouldn't say run. They don't really run much, do they? They walked very quickly away. But I would like to bring on to today's podcast to discuss health with me friend of mine, Jillene. Now, if she sounds a little out of breath, it's because she just challenged me to a push-ups before we got started on this, and we just did that, and she's still recovering a little. Jillene, say hi to the world.
Hi. And actually, Chad beat me. We did a push-up contest, and of course, I'm still out of breath, and he's doing just fine.
It's okay. We just did some push-ups. Everybody actually pause right now, drop, give us 20.
Might as well. Start now.
Right? Start your health whenever.
Why would you wait?
You're absolutely right. So we are here today to talk health, Jillene, because at Win, Make, Give, we talk about health, wealth, leadership, and legacy. Yet Ben does his best to often shift us away when we start to have those health conversations. And thought you would be a wonderful person for it. So I'm not going to tell everybody why you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your health background, your health history, so that everybody understands why it's you and I having this conversation.
Sure. Well, thank you for having this topic with me. I'm excited about this, and I'm thinking I've got this long list of notes that I brought in today, yet I'm so passionate about this topic that I don't think I need them. I think I just let myself go off script because there's so many good things to talk about on this topic. It's really the foundation for our lives, right? Yes. And my health journey, it wasn't significant, right? But it's important to look at. And because I started as a child, eating just normal food. I didn't eat a lot of Fruit Loops, right? I did eat cereal, and my mom made a lot of meat and potatoes. And as I got older and into college, I started eating pizza and realized what pizza does to your physique. I got those love handles, right? And those love handles actually don't help you find love, I found. Yeah, and I realized there in college that I had to make a change. And so the motivation for making a change was the love handles. Okay. Because I thought, well, here's a physical representation of this thing on my body that I need to get rid of, right? So that was the initial motivation. And so I started weightlifting at about 19 years old. Okay. And actually, since then, I never stopped. So that was the start. What was really interesting about it, Chad, is that I had the motivation to work out to physically transform my body, right? I wanted to see the physical transformation, something that was tangible, right? And so over time, I realized that I needed more than that. I realized that I need to focus on my internal health and treating food as medicine so that I could have more energy, that I could hopefully live longer. And of course, there's lots of anti-aging benefits that go with it as well, right? Yes, there are. So that was a little bit of my health journey. And it's only recently, I would say in the last 2 years, where I went from focusing on exercise for that physical, tangible representation to I've really got to change this to my internal focus. So that's been the last 2 years of my journey.
And along the way, you decided to not only help yourself, but help others, because you've coached many people in health.
I have. So when I started weightlifting, I realized that I was not very self-accountable. So I signed up for classes at a gym, and that was built-in accountability for me. And that worked really, really well. And over time, I realized I needed more. And so I had the opportunity to get my certification in a weightlifting class called BodyPump. And after I got my certification, I started teaching. And when I was teaching, I realized that for every hour of class that I taught, I had to study for 2. And so those 2 hours became extra workouts for me. But Chad, I'm not super self-accountable. I had to build that into my life to reach my health and fitness goals.
And it's okay, because folks, most of us are not self-accountable. Hardest person to hold accountable is yourself. Always. That's why we meet a friend at the gym. That's why we do that. And you just went all the way to the other extreme and said, well, I'm going to be the coach at the gym, because then they're all going to be counting on me to be there.
Exactly. There's no way I could just skip a class because I didn't feel like it that day.
And I remember when you became a coach because, boy, were you running around the office practicing, listening to certain songs because you had to for the workout. And I remember one of your first classes, you invited a whole bunch of us to attend.
I did. I recruited half of the office to come with me to a body pump class.
Yes.
And there was lots of feedback. What was yours, Chad?
To you or just the class in general? I don't remember my feedback to you at the time. I remember walking in there. I remember the body pump class involved a lot of movement as well as light weight. But I remember having the barbell in front of me or whatever that I was going to use and started putting weight on it. And I do remember you coming over and saying, you might want to start lighter. And I'm sure glad I did because, wow, by the end of that class, it's amazing what 5 or 10 pounds can really do. You don't have to be lifting 100 to 200 pounds.
Low weights, high reps.
Yes.
That's a really good example for our lives, right?
Sure.
Not adding on too much too quickly.
Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, we both have the Peloton as well. And when we ordered the Peloton, you get little dumbbells to go with it for some of the rides. And I was laughing when we were ordering it because they said, well, you can have a 1 pound, a 2 pound, or a 3 pound. And I was like, wow, a whole 3 pound. You don't know how many times during those workouts on the ride, I want to just throw those things as far away from me as possible because it hurts when you are actually using those low weights, high reps.
Yeah, and I think we attach ego to weight oftentimes, or ego to like something, we have to do something massive in order to maybe feed our ego. And you could relate that to the number of weights that you lift or a guy or a gal might lift at the gym, when in reality, what's more important?
Interesting, because I think you walk into the gym and so many people are intimidated by that guy. We'll just say the guy, but that guy over there who's lifting so much weight or pressing so much weight, and he's really not doing what's best for him probably. Now, that day might be a day he's going for a PR. It might be something along those lines. But overall, he's probably not giving himself the best possible workout if he's just ego lifting.
Exactly. And I think you could relate that to social media. So for some of us, when we look at Instagram or we look at Facebook, we can see pictures of what we think are beautiful people, and maybe that is overwhelming for us. Maybe that causes us to withdraw and not take action, or maybe it actually gets us motivated and we're like, I want to do that too, and so I'm not going to make any excuses for myself today on my workout. I'm just going to do it.
Okay, so it's choosing to follow the right people from what you're saying, because you're right, we are all on Facebook, or we all are on Instagram, we're all playing out there somewhere. If it helps you, pay attention to it. If it doesn't help you, stop watching.
If it doesn't help you stop watching, that's the first step that I would say to take in your health journey, is to avoid something that has a negative reaction, which we can often find on social in so many different ways, right? You'll find me deleting the Instagram app or the Facebook app off my phone for periods of time. It's not for that particular reason, but it's for other reasons that have to do more with mental health than physical health for me. But I think it could benefit a lot of people to disconnect from the things that are making you withdraw because it seems like it's just too much, or I'll never be like that.
Okay. You talked mental health. You mentioned mental health in there. How much is mental health just tied to physical health?
Well, I think that, like I said, food is medicine, and I'm not a doctor. So
neither of us are doctors. Anything we say, go consult with a doctor.
Yet.
We both have multiple certifications, but we're not doctors.
Exactly. And we're real people. But I like coming from this perspective of being real, because what Chad and I are talking about today is realistic for any person listening to this podcast. And that is the mission for me, is to make it step by step and realize that it is important to your life. So I think really the first step is realizing what you want to get out of it, right?
Okay.
So, and that's starting with your why.
Okay.
And figuring out, why would you be motivated to get uncomfortable to exercise? Like when you and I just did push-ups, it wasn't super comfortable, right? Would it be easier to sit on the couch and watch Ozarks, or would it be...
Sure.
Right? We'd rather do that than do push-ups. It's uncomfortable.
Okay. Sometimes I might want to do that instead of the push-ups.
Chad and I are also freaks, and we love to work out.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that more later. But figuring out, like, why would we be willing to get uncomfortable and say no to ice cream, or yes to exercise.
It's
So
interesting. And I think you're going to find during this conversation, Jillene and I are going to disagree on a few things,
we will.
such as that saying no to ice cream. You can be sure I don't say no to ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get to that, folks. So hang in there as
Sugar is the enemy, Chad.
We'll battle that one out, as sugar apparently is the enemy. Or so she thinks. All right. So Jillene, you want to help people get going here. Obviously, they have to start with their why. Now, I'm a big believer of you get in the deep end. I'm going to throw people into the deep end. It's one of the things, I'm not the nicest guy in the world when it comes to that stuff. I'm going to throw you in the deep end, and then I'm going to say, let's learn to swim. I'm going to say, you want to get into health? Good. Go run a half marathon. Go run a marathon. Go do a Spartan race. Go do one of those things just to challenge yourself, and then we can get better at it. Whereas you might tell people here, okay, we're going to start, and we're going to do this little, and we're going to progress, and we're going to progress, and we're going to progress. So half the people on this podcast are like, I don't even want to focus on health, which we all know they should, and they're still listening because they know they should. And half of them are going to jump in the deep end with me. The other half are going to want to wade into this pool a little bit. What's step one for those people in your mind?
For the ones that want to wade into the pool?
Yep.
Well, I think looking at it as more than just losing weight or like transforming physically, right? I think it's realizing all of the other benefits and byproducts to exercise and eating healthy, because there are a ton of byproducts, right? You can alleviate mental fog. You have more energy to do the things that you love. And if you love hanging out with your family, right, and you love your business and you love giving time to those two things, then if you have less energy to do it because you put health as a last priority, then you're harming your first two or your number one.
Got it. And I've heard that quote before, and I don't know who to attribute it to, and I'm going to get it wrong. It's something like, give time to health now, or you're going to be forced to give time to your health later.
Yeah, and it's hard to have a vision of the future. It's hard to see that like any one of us could be affected by the four killers, which are like heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, cancer, right? And any of us are easily prone to that as we get older. And for me, I'm trying to think ahead and plan for that now, but not everyone's like that. And I started off that way, Chad.
Okay.
When I was in my teens and my 20s, I literally thought I was invincible.
Well, we all did.
Like, my genetics are good. Yeah, right. My energy is good. I can eat this way, right? Mm-hmm. It's not going to impact me. And then I realized, hopefully not too late, that I could still change that trajectory for my future.
So any of you who have your teen children listening along, the wonderful metabolism you have now is changing. Don't think that what you're getting away with now, you're going to get away with forever, because Jillene and I both thought the same thing.
Very true.
Okay.
Yep.
So we know that it's not just about looking better, but there are all the other benefits that are coming along with it. So you're talking things like more energy, so that I can actually do more things because I'm going to have more energy. So there's the endorphins that come with it. I'm going to probably be in a better mood, and I'm going to be just a happier person because of the endorphins that are being released. You're talking about that mental fog being cleared. What are some of the other benefits you would tell people exist just by exercising?
Well, it's going to help us live longer, right? It's going to help us look younger.
Well, we all want that.
Yep. And, I interviewed a few people before this podcast to find out what their whys would be. Mm-hmm. And a couple of them, the ones that were single, said, I want a partner who looks healthy and is healthy. And in order to get that partner, I also need to be healthy. I need to be the person that I'm looking for. Yes. And that was part of their motivation.
Wow. Here you came for a health podcast, folks, and Jillene's giving you relationship tips too.
We should do another podcast
on
that
okay.
one.
It sounds like a totally different topic. And again, we might not have Bob or Ben around for that one.
And my motivation really is that I love personal achievement.
Okay.
And that's a big purpose in my life, is having this personal achievement. It's just showing like what is possible for me. What can I accomplish that I can define, that I can personally feel proud of? For instance, when I ride Peloton, Chad, I like those PRs, those personal records.
There you go.
It's so much fun for me. And sometimes I post them on social media to celebrate, but oftentimes I'm actually celebrating with just myself and saying, wow, I did 2 points higher than the last one, and I feel really great about that. I've got 65, 70 rides in so far since I bought the Peloton, so not a lot, but those PRs are important to me because it shows that I'm making improvements and just testing the limits of my body, and that's personal achievement. So if there's listeners on this podcast that really do value personal achievement, I think one of the biggest byproducts of a health journey with both diet and exercise could be realizing your potential and what you can achieve.
Yeah, and there's a lot of achievers, obviously, listening to our podcast, yet they haven't turned it into that health part. And if you like to achieve and if you like to have that feeling that comes with it, just think of the ones you can create by now adding in a health challenge for your life.
Right. And I know a lot, and you know a lot of really successful people that are surrounding us that are successful in their businesses. And they have these huge achievements in their businesses.
Yep.
Now, seeing that, I look at them, Chad, and I'm like, you could do this. You achieve that? You could absolutely achieve this increased level of health and peak performance.
If they wanted it.
If they wanted it. If they really figured out what motivated them and why they would be willing to get uncomfortable. Because, Chad, it's not so much about motivation as it is just starting the momentum. So instead of waiting for motivation, we want to build momentum instead.
Interesting. I like that. Okay. So instead of waiting for the motivation, we just build momentum.
Right.
How do you do it, Jillene? How do I build that momentum?
For one, start today.
Okay.
It might be right after this podcast.
Okay.
Anyone who says, I'm going to start tomorrow or next week in the new year is likely to not achieve the thing that they're looking
Which
to
is
do.
why New Year's resolutions fail before January at a ridiculous something like 87% of the time, because those are people who are just saying something and they're putting it off.
I've been one of those statistics. Have you?
I'm sure there are many things I have said I would do. I'm not a believer in New Year's Eve. I'm a believer in any day can be that day. So why not start today?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're saying if I want to build that momentum, I should just start today.
Start today.
Doing what? I mean, give me specific. I have no health. I'm sitting here on the sofa listening to the podcast right now. What could I do today that's going to start me on this journey? Because I do want to take my health seriously.
I really do believe that the first part of and the first step to take is becoming better educated. And that is listening to podcasts and reading books.
Got any suggestions?
Reading articles, watching YouTube videos. Yeah, there's a couple of books that my friends have shared with me have been really impactful to them, so I'm going to share those books with you. One is The Plant Paradox.
Okay.
Another is Superhuman. Breaking the Habit of Being Ourself by Joe Dispenza. And for me personally was Atomic Habits by James Clear. And James Clear actually has a really good online website and blog and like an email list that you can get on where he sends you short bursts of inspiration. And it's not necessarily surrounding health, but it's around creating habit in your life. And what I learned from that book in particular is that for me to build a habit, I needed to figure out what identity I wanted for myself. So for instance, instead of saying like, Chad, I want to run more, which I feel like I've had this love-hate relationship with running for a long time.
Do.
Right? And I thought to myself, am I ever going to love running? I'm not sure I will. I feel like it's a struggle every time. I breathe funny. I break out in hives, literally, because I have a circulation issue. And so that makes me not want to run. And so I had to figure out, like, well, am I going to just say no to running for the rest of my life, which could be a big part of my health, or do I figure it out and build a habit out of it? And so I realized that instead of just saying I'm going to go run, I would tell myself I am a runner. This is part of my identity. And it's the identity that I wanted, Chad, not just for you to see, because you always compliment me on when I exercise and some of my achievements. You do. You're so great at that, right? And other people in my world. But what I needed to tie it into was, did that feed my soul? Did that become part of the identity that was important to myself and not anyone else? Okay. And so these types of books and podcasts and education help us figure out what's important to adopt as a lifestyle versus just a fad.
And there are hundreds and hundreds of books you could read. I mean, we've had Joe DeSena and the founder of Spartan. He's got some books. We've had David Goggins. Obviously, Can't Hurt Me. I mean, there are so many. We could just give you an hour of books you could read in the health world. It's probably one of the top categories that's out there. Yet Jillene's given you some good ones if you really want to learn about the food, what it's doing to you, and all of that kind of stuff. So let's talk diet before we talk too specific, I guess, on exercise, because Jillene, we're going to disagree a little, so we can have that. And diet, I'm going to tell everybody out there, like it or not, you can't out-exercise a bad diet. So if your diet stinks, doesn't matter what exercise you're doing, you've got to start with the diet. 80% of it is diet, right? And diet's the wrong word. I'm saying diet as in what you eat. I'm not saying diet as in Whole30, Atkins, keto, all of that kind of stuff. I'm actually a huge, I want to say not proponent, whatever the opposite of proponent is. I am against diets. I think diets are fads, and I think diets just give us things to cheat on, and then we completely fall off the wagon and we actually put on more weight than the diet helped us ever lose, even though we felt good for the first 30 or 40 days. I believe it's a lifestyle change. So when I refer to diet, I'm referring to whatever your diet is. So Jillene, let's have the argument. Talk about diet.
Well, this might actually be one thing we agree on.
Well, I'm sure there are a few. So what do you got?
Not doing diets, right? Not doing fads. I do think that it's good to be educated on what they are because you might take pieces of them that you adopt as your lifestyle.
Yes.
So I'll tell you some really specific things that I've implemented recently. And I think the first one is that I've always tried to limit flour in my life.
Not flowers. If you want to send Jillene flowers, she would love that.
Flowers, yes, please. I'll give you my home address.
Okay.
Send them there directly. And so white flour, wheat flour, any type of flour, it's just been one thing that I've said, you know what? I need to create a lifestyle where I don't need this in it.
Okay.
But that was hard for me this summer. I kind of went off the bandwagon. I love bread with some like olive oil and some balsamic, like I'm sitting there in Italy, on this nice veranda. And that to me with some wine, that sounds perfect. So that is a change that I've attempted this year to say, hey, if I were to remove that one thing, how could I potentially sustain that for the rest of my life?
That's the key word right there. You've got to be able to sustain it forever. I'm watching people my mom's visiting and she's on the keto program. But she's looking at everything that we're eating and going, oh, just give me a little piece of that. Oh, just give me, it's like, it's not sustainable is what that means.
Right.
So it's got to be sustainable. That's something we will agree on, folks. Watch out for these diet programs. You've got to be choosing something sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
There's definitely something to the Whole30 because a lot of the Whole30 is like whole foods such as meats and vegetables. And really that's a great diet. Okay. Having protein that is especially grass-fed, pasture-raised is really important.
Yep.
Do research on that because that's really important to the nutrients in your body, to bring the right nutrients in and eat the right food. And then the vegetables, of course. And there's ways to make it fun, Chad, and I've had to figure out how to make it fun because I'm a foodie. You're a foodie too, aren't you?
No? Not that bad. I really could just live on the same meal every day if I had to.
Okay.
I'd be okay with it.
I think so too, but when I'm eating breakfast, I'm already thinking about dinner.
No, I'm probably in the middle of dinner thinking about what we're going to have for dinner half the time. Wait, what are we going to have? Oh, yeah, here. It's in front of me anyway, and I'm eating it. Okay, so your belief is very specific. Now, we all know the term carbs. We all know the term protein. We all know the term fats. What are your thoughts on the three main food groups?
I think start with educating yourself because there's lots of things that I find are facts that I could give to you on this podcast. But I think it's important that you go and research what facts you can find through some of these recommendations and then design your diet based on that.
Okay.
And I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all, Chad. I think everyone's a little bit different. I feel like my body does not respond well to sugar. I gain weight, I bloat, I don't reach my health goals when I eat sugar. And I realized that actually was a great domino for me to say, hey, if I discontinue eating sugar, then the rest becomes easier or unnecessary.
Okay.
And there's a mindset factor around that too, Chad. where lots of people, when they write out their goals, they say, okay, for this week or this month, no sugar. So the word no means we're essentially depriving ourselves of something. Or if someone says no carbs or, no bread, no gluten.
Correct.
It'd be depriving yourself
Yes.
of that thing.
Okay.
And changing the mindset around it, for me, was super beneficial. So saying, Chad, I'm going to be sugar-free. I'm going to give Chad all of the ice cream in my freezer to reach that goal, and I'm going to be free of that sugar.
So it's different wording is going to make a huge difference for you. Not saying I don't eat sugar or I don't eat carbs or I can't have them, and taking that mindset that goes along with those words, and you're choosing to become sugar-free.
Exactly.
Or low carb or whatever.
Right, because when you become educated on what sugar does to the body and you see how toxic it is, you're actually freeing your body of those toxins.
Okay. So half
by
of
not
it's the
putting
words.
them into your body.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the foods that you miss the most, Jillene?
Gosh, well, there's either...
I'm going to make it real hard for you tonight when it comes to dinner.
I've already ordered my dinner off of Whole Foods.
Of course you have.
Delivered to my house in the next 2 hours.
Okay. Yeah, what are the foods you're missing?
I think I'm a savory person versus a sweet person.
Mm-hmm.
What would you consider yourself?
Oh, I'm sweet. Oh yeah, I might not be a sweet person, but I'm a sweets person. We'll just stick to that.
That's a good one, Chad.
Thank you. I'm a candy guy. I love my candy. I mean, I hired a nutritionist a few years ago. Nita and I hired a nutritionist because we were training, and she wanted it. She said, if I'm going to train to run a half marathon, I'm doing it all. I'm getting someone who's going to teach me how to eat, and I'm going to get all that. And the guy we hired for 2 reasons. When they came and made a presentation, his partner, she said, she has a glass of wine every night. And he said, and he eats Sour Patch Kids every day. And I went, okay, I'm in heaven. Because I can have my Sour Patch Kids and Nita can have her wine. We're going to hire them. And they just taught us how to make sure we're eating that stuff properly.
Right.
So to us, we don't give up anything. There's nothing missing. That's why I'll say I have ice cream for dinner. But you can be sure I'm following a program. And I know my carb intake for the day. I know my protein intake for the day. I know my fat intake for the day. And I know if I'm going to have pizza tonight, or I'm going to have ice cream tonight, or I'm going to have whatever tonight, I'm putting it into my food tracking app first thing in the morning. And then I plan the rest of my day around it. And I work out to earn it.
Do you track every single day?
Every day.
Is it worth it?
It's absolutely worth it. Folks, if you're not tracking, how do you know what you're doing? Right? You do it in your business. You do it in other things in your life. You do it with your checkbook. You track it. And those of you out there who don't track your checkbook, 1, go back and listen to the Wealth series. And 2, now you're wondering where all the money went because you're not tracking it. Right? So I'm a big believer in tracking everything. Now, do I still track every single day? No, probably not, because after 5 years of doing this, I'm really good at kind of looking at the food and knowing what I'm having.
Sure.
But I've had the same breakfast for probably 3 years every day.
So if you eat the same thing every day, is it really necessary to track?
No. If I eat the exact same thing every day, it's not necessary to track because I know what I've hit. I eat the same breakfast and almost same lunch most days. And then dinner is where we allow some creativity, and snacks will be where I'll allow some creativity. Now, one thing I want to mention, I know you had it here in a note, you mentioned cheat days. So before I give my opinion on it, why don't you talk about the concept of a cheat day, Jillene?
Well, you asked me, you said, what have I given up that I miss?
Yeah.
And the reality is I haven't given anything up.
Okay.
There's still times I eat sugar. There's still times I eat bread.
You heard it here
I like
first,
to
folks.
partake, Chad.
Okay.
I mean, I'm a really big lover of life.
Sure.
I think that life is here to live. And I also think that's a dangerous thought because all of a sudden we get in this momentum of like eating and drinking whatever we want because we've got this one life.
Yes.
Right? That can go both ways.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got this rule for myself, and it's called the 90-10 rule.
Okay.
Where 90% of the time I'm going to eat good.
Okay.
And 10% of the time I'm going to indulge a little.
Okay.
Right?
So is that like once a week? Would that be 90? That's probably not exactly 90-10.
Yeah, I would say once a week.
Okay.
Absolutely. You know, I think you pick the thing that you really love, whether that's sugar or maybe wine or bread. but you can't do all three.
I can't.
Right? You can't do all three. So you need to pick and choose which one is your biggest indulgence,
Okay.
and then maybe make that the 10%.
Okay.
And I've got this really fun life hack that I use
All right.
that
Let's
I'm
hear it.
still fine-tuning, Chad.
Okay.
And it is the celebration technique.
Okay.
Meaning every time someone has a birthday in the family, I've got 5 siblings and I've got a bunch of nephews and nieces. So I've got a big family. And every time that there's a celebration or a birthday or a wedding or an anniversary or something we're celebrating, there's often cake, there's champagne, there's lots of good stuff. There's like the homemade German food that my family does. It's amazing, right? It's so good. And so on those days, the days that we're celebrating are the days I'm going to partake because it becomes a part of the connection in the culture.
Yep.
And what I found is that there's more celebrations than we think. So I tend to then eat cake or drink champagne more than I think. So it
rained yesterday, Jillene. That was worth celebrating. I'll find any reason to celebrate if that's the rule.
That's true. I could celebrate this podcast by having some rosé tonight.
There you go, right? I did a good job on the podcast. All right, here's my concept on cheat days. Okay, I think we all do cheat days backwards. And I think what we do is we say, I'm going to take a day away from exercise and I'm going to eat everything in sight. I'm going to have my pizza or I'm going to have my this or I'm going to have that. And it's the day we have the lowest level output. I'm going to tell you, you're allowed a cheat day. Yet you got to earn the cheat day. If you know you're going to eat and cheat, then you got to exercise extra that day. Because the day you cheat from exercise and say, I'm not working out that day, that's the day you have to watch your intake more than anything. I would challenge anybody who's really serious. If you're serious about this, not just an amateur who wants to get in the game and just start working out, you've got to go learn your resting metabolic rate. Okay, and you can do this in many, many ways. You can go spend money and take a test. You can go, there are certain machines that can do it very quickly for you. You can get something like the Whoop band that I wear that tracks it. And the resting metabolic rate, what that is that's how many calories you burn if you woke up in the morning, stared at the ceiling, and never got out of bed all day. Like you didn't even change the channel. Someone else changed the channels for you while you just laid there. We all burn calories doing that. And you need to know what that level of calorie is that you're burning so that you know on a day that you're not exercising where your numbers need to be to maintain what you've been working towards. I believe in a day off from exercise every now and then. Not regularly. I'm not one of those who says every 7 days you got to take a day off. And even on that day off, I'm probably still out walking. It's the strain you've got to take a break from. Okay.
Especially when you're Chad Hyams and you run half marathons, Spartan races. And it can take a toll on your body, right?
Yes.
And when people first start their exercise journey, oftentimes they think they need to go from 0 to 60.
Yes.
Right? And I've had friends who have said, Jillene, guess what I'm doing? Chad, I'm going to drink 2 gallons of water a day and I'm going to run a 5K. And then at night, I'm going to lift weights for 15 minutes and then do 20 minutes of stretching and yoga.
Right.
And guess how long that I find that lasts?
An hour.
An hour, pretty much day one.
Yeah, they get through the first bottle of water and say, I can't drink that much and give up.
Pretty much day one, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So folks, you can get to whatever level you want. Just like we've talked on so many episodes, your business can get to any level you want. Your relationship can get to any level you want. Your bank account can get to any level you want. It's going to be compounded interest over time. We've talked about that again and again and again. So whether it's in your business, whether it's in your bank account, whether it's your health, we're going to be compounding. And it's going to be adding and adding and adding and adding and adding. And yes, you can drink 2 gallons of water a day. Yes, you can run a 5K. Yes, you can lift weights in the evening. Yes, you can do yoga. You're not starting there, though. You have to start, and then it's going to compound to a point where all of a sudden you look up and you're living that life Jillene was just mentioning.
Right. And then after you've educated yourself and you're designing your own diet and health plan, the starting point, which should be today, Chad, because there's always a starting point that we can do today.
Okay.
It should be something that we think we could enjoy, right? And it was interesting when I got the Peloton because I wasn't sure whether or not I would enjoy it. And that actually made me panic a little because I thought this is a really expensive piece of equipment and I have no idea if I love doing this.
Yes.
But then when I got on the Peloton and I realized that these programs were super motivational and they excited me and I wanted to keep doing it, like it just kept calling me back for more, that that's what I need in my life for the rest of my life. So what's the thing that any one of us can find today that we enjoy? And the starting point could simply be walking. Could be walking with our families. It could be riding a bike outdoors, right? It could be simply just saying, for 10 minutes, I'm going to put on this YouTube video until I design a better exercise plan. But I need to get my body moving today.
Okay.
Because that is really the sticking point. Like, we have to get unstuck. And to get unstuck, we need to make a decision that is not going to start tomorrow or next week.
Okay, I see on your wrist, Apple Watch. Is that what I'm seeing from here?
It's an Apple Watch with a gold,
the nice pretty
band.
Apple Watch. Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, you went for the nice pretty Apple Watch.
Right.
You tracking your steps?
I do track my steps.
Why?
Personal achievement. I'm just curious to see how far I walk in a day.
Okay.
I don't actually walk a whole lot because I find myself more in like exercise programs. The only time I'm actually going to get extra steps in if that's a running day or a sprinting day.
Right.
But I will walk up the stairs instead of taking the elevator, or if I go to the grocery store, then I'll actually park at the back of the parking lot to get a few extra steps in.
Yeah, I was asked this the other day. That's why I'm asking you. Someone was asking me about counting steps, and I don't count steps. I don't believe in counting steps. I know there's so many people out there who believe in 10,000 steps a day. 10,000 steps a day doesn't mean you're healthy. 10,000 steps a day means you move 10,000 steps a day. And it's better than sitting in a chair all day. And that's where it really came from, because so many of our population are static, sitting in a chair in an office all day. So it was, if we can get you up and get you moving. You're not getting exercise by getting 10,000 steps a day. I can get 10,000 steps a day and never get my heart rate above normal. You've got to get 20 minutes of elevated heart rate every day, folks.
Right, because walking doesn't bring as much blood to the brain, blood flow to the brain, as you need to have all of those awesome byproducts like endorphins and so on.
So I'm going to challenge you again. And I said I'm not the nice one here. I'm going to challenge you that if you're counting steps, stop counting steps. I'm going to challenge you to count heart rate. Track your heart rate, whatever you're using, and see, can you get over 70% of your heart rate for at least 20 minutes every day? Now, if you don't know what your heart rate 70% number should be, here you go. I'm going to give you simple math. I don't have Bob here. Bob usually does math for us, but this is an easy way to calculate your heart rate. Take the number 220 and subtract your age from that. Okay? That's 100% of your heart rate. Now, multiply that by 70%, and you know that you need to get your heart rate over that number for 20 minutes every day. I don't care if it's running. I don't care if it's walking up steep hills or stairs. That'll do it for you. I don't care if it's weightlifting. I don't care if it's jumping rope. I don't care if it's chasing kids around the backyard of your house, whatever it is. 20 minutes consistent getting your heart rate up. Everybody can do that.
That's a great first step. Now, it was really interesting. Recently, I had a massage therapist who had a very cool story of his health journey, where he went from 300 pounds to, I think he's about 190 right now. And, you know, he was telling me about his journey. And then I asked him, I said, well, what about when you have health issues that you feel like are preventing you from working out and exercising? You know, maybe you have knee pain or things like that. And he said, it's actually not the injuries that I find to be the biggest hang up and the biggest problem when I'm working with people. He said, it's the people who are sedentary. Mm-hmm. And of course, I think people that do have health issues, they should either take an exercise class that helps you work around it, or hire a personal trainer or a nutritionist and a nutritionist. But I also just realized when I heard him that, like, gosh, I sit in an office chair a lot during the day. And that's a really sedentary lifestyle. Even though I might exercise 20 minutes later that day, most of my day is very sedentary. So how can I just get my body moving right now? And Chad, I don't know about you, but if you ever popped onto Instagram or Facebook or some other type of site that gets you, maybe your stock account, and you find yourself in this black hole, and maybe you just meant to pop on there because it's probably become a habit to do so. But then 10 minutes later, you find yourself still in that app.
Yep.
Right? But that's 10 minutes that you could have been doing something to get your body moving.
You're right.
And I think that's 10 minutes that anyone that's listening to this podcast could do right now. You could actually be moving while you're listening to this podcast.
And I hear from so many people who tell me, oh, I heard the podcast while I was out for my run this morning. I was listening to it, something like that. Wes is probably doing it right now.
He probably is. And Chad, your voice is very motivating. So I would listen to you on a run any day of the week.
Well, thanks. I'm going to start knowing that you're listening while we're running. And every time we're in mid-episode, I'm going to say, Jillene, speed up. All right. So that'll be specifically for you for a push.
It's like having your own personal sergeant.
Okay. Got it. So, gang, what we want you to understand is health is, and Jillene used the word again. She said health journey as she was telling the story of that person. No one ever has a health destination. We're always on a health journey. I will tell you, I weighed 250 pounds. I weighed 170 pounds. I went back up to 220 pounds. I came down to 170 pounds. I went back up to 200. Now I'm in the low 180s, and that's where I know my body wants to be. That's where I'm at my peak performance level and all of that stuff. It's always going to be a journey. You're going to go up. You're going to go down. You're going to have some setbacks. You're going to be moving in the right direction. But it always starts with diet, making sure you're making smart choices and figuring out the diet that works for you. Again, when we say diet, we're not talking a diet program. We're talking your diet. I will tell you how I live. This is how I've been trained and I work by. 50% of my day is a carb intake. 25% is protein and 25% is fat. Now, that'll change as I get closer to an event that I'm training for slightly, yet that's a general overview for me. So on the food, I'm using MyFitnessPal. We're not getting paid by him or anything. That's what I'm using to track. And I'm looking for 50% carbs, 25% protein, 25% fat. I'm also using the calculation, the recommended protein intake. I use this number. It's 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. So folks, you want more confusing math, take your body weight, divide by 2.2. That's how you go from pounds to kilograms for those of you who weigh in pounds. And then take that, multiply it by 0.8, and now you know how many grams of protein you should be taking in every day, which should be 25% of your daily intake. I'll tell you, the single best thing Nita and I ever bought to help our health was a food scale.
Wow.
We weigh everything. I had mixed nuts this morning. You can be sure I weighed out 1 ounce because that's what a serving is. I have potato chips, folks, but I weigh out 1 ounce, which is what a serving is, which is plenty when you actually get used to eating this way.
When I hear you say that, it makes me think about awareness because, to be honest with you, I'm not willing to weigh my food. Mm-hmm. And I don't track my calorie intake every day. Mm-hmm. I do very much watch what I eat, okay, right? And choose foods that are fuel and the right types of fats for my body. I do eat a very high-fat diet, but it's the right kind of fats, right? Not the McDonald's French fries. When I hear you talk about weighing your food and tracking your calories and tracking your heart rate, mm-hmm, all very, very important things. And I think it's the difference between like a sweet and savory person. I'm a savory, you're a sweet, and you're tracking and I'm not, but we're both healthy people. Yep. I think you do what works for you, right? And I think if that works for you, especially if it gives you the momentum that you need to be consistent and just create awareness around what you're eating. Like oftentimes people fail because when on their cheat day, instead of having just, a couple scoops of ice cream, they have the whole bucket.
Are you sure that's wrong? Again, dinner for us sometimes will be the Ben & Jerry's pint. Yeah.
Right. And I'm working on this with a friend right now about peanut butter because peanut butter is actually something I chose to cut out of my diet in the last couple of months. It's just a micro change that I'm making, a personal choice. Yep. And 1 spoonful isn't going to hurt you, but who just has 1 spoonful of peanut butter?
A serving is 2 tablespoons, but you've got to stop.
And if you eat 3 spoonfuls or you eat half the tub, then do you have awareness around how many grams of sugar was in that? Yep. Right?
Folks, if you are sitting there with a spoon and a thing of peanut butter in your hand, put it down, step away, listen to the podcast episode again.
Take a picture, send it to me. We'll talk.
Yes, we'll absolutely talk. Folks, what we want you to understand about this is there are so many different things in the world of health that we could talk for hours. And, well, maybe we'll have you back and we'll talk for hours over time again and again and again on different episodes as we have different specific challenges people are facing. You've got to customize it to you. You can't do it on your own. Jillene even said she's not a self-accountable person. Most of us are not. We need someone to be held accountable to. And we're going to give ourselves the easiest possible way out. So you can't choose what that food program is on your own. You've got to either do your research or you've got to reach out to someone and just say, I'm going to completely trust and follow what that person has said until they prove me right or wrong in that situation. You've got to do your research, as Jillene was saying, whether it's reading books, watching YouTubes, talking to people. Overall, though, you got to just start. You got to start something today, whether that's add more water to your diet, whether that is remove some food you know you shouldn't be eating, whether that is get up and say, okay, Chad, I can't do 20 minutes of elevated heart rate, but I'll give myself 5 minutes every day. And tomorrow I'll make it 6, and then I'll make it 7. And before you know it, you are at the 20. So Jillene, we've talked about a bunch. We've been all over the spectrum with health because, well, there's just so much, and we could keep going, and we haven't even touched on much of it. But give everybody one last thought before we get out of here with this episode today. They might be listening while they're moving right now. They might just be sitting still. They might be in the car. But whatever it is, give everybody a last thought in the health conversation.
Remember that your emotions don't have to make the final decision.
I want more. Tell me more.
Emotionally, I've had a hard day, or I'm tired, and I just want to reach for that thing, that thing that's easy. It's instant gratification.
Yeah, the ice cream.
The ice cream.
Yep.
For some people, it's
chocolate,
Sour Patch Kids.
Yeah,
right?
All of it. I'll give you a whole list.
Yeah, and just realizing like that's the emotional side of you speaking,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't have to be the thing that makes the final decision. So being aware that your emotions are trying to make that decision for you, and realizing, thinking ahead instead and saying, am I serving myself now or later by making this decision in the moment, this poor decision in the moment? Will I be happy looking back on this decision tomorrow? And maybe the first time we fail when we ask ourselves these questions, but maybe the second time we succeed. And realize that every time we say no, or we rid ourselves, or we free ourselves of something unhealthy, we're adding another layer of strength to ourselves. It's mental strength, it's not physical strength.
Yep.
But that layer is going to have a compound effect. And then look back at the end of the day and reflect on your day and say, Chad, what is 1% improvement that I could make in this reflection process? What did I do today that I would want to improve on tomorrow just by 1%?
Okay.
And if I make 1% improvement every day, it's not that much, right? And actually, if you had a 1% unimprovement, the opposite, right?
Yep.
If you lost 1% of improvement, you're not really going to feel that either.
Right.
And yet 365 days later,
is it possible to lose 365%?
you could, as James Clear would say in Atomic Habits, you could be 37 times more improved by just making 1% improvement a day. And then outline what your successful day will look like with that 1% improvement. Maybe it's drinking more water. That's the 1%. For me, that's actually my next step because I've struggled with drinking water. It's not something that comes naturally to me. I'm drinking a Topo Chico on this podcast.
I don't even know what that is.
This is
that a water?
My cheat drink. It's a mineral water.
Got it.
Made out of Mexico.
Okay.
But highly carbonated. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So maybe tomorrow, Chad, or tonight when I'm reflecting, I'll think, okay, I need less carbonation in what I drink. And so tomorrow I would make that 1% improvement. Maybe it's having 1 instead of 2. So they're micro changes, right? They're not, it's not taking massive action. I mean, massive action is ideal, right? It gets us there faster.
Sure.
But if we realize the power of the compound effect, then if we just start today and get that 1% improvement, it's going to happen much faster than we think. And that's exciting, especially if you love personal achievement. And personal achievement doesn't have to be running a half marathon or a Spartan race like Chad. It could just be looking back a year from now and saying, wow, I used to really enjoy eating Cheetos, and now they repulse me. That could be the one of the achievements. I know I have a cousin who drank a lot of Diet Coke and just celebrated her 1 year anniversary of not drinking Diet Coke. And I thought to myself, that is such a big deal, right? And all she did was start with day 1, and that was just one thing. It wasn't a complete overhaul. It was just one thing, but that made a really big difference in her life.
All right. So now we mean no ill will towards Coke or Cheetos on our podcast, of course, if any of them are listening. But that doesn't mean you should run out and buy yourself a Coke and a bag of Cheetos, because we're here focused on your health. We want to talk about that with you. 1% micro change. That's all you have to make every day. You're running? Great. Can you knock 1 second off that run? That's all you're looking to do every day. If you knocked 1 second off every day, by the end of the month, you've knocked 30 seconds off your run. It's getting on that bike, if you're Peloton or just any bike you're using, and it's hitting 1 more watt when you're pumping on that bike and hitting those goals as you're pedaling along. It's 1 more glass of water every day. It's 1 less piece of candy every day. It's 1 more whatever that's going to be for you. We know you can do it. We just want you to start now. So on behalf of all of us here at the Win, Make, Give team, we want you to set some goal for your health. Doesn't have to be a big one. It just has to be one that's going to get you started, that you're going to start creating whatever this new plan is going to be. And we want to know what that is. Join us in our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/win-make-give, and let us know what it's going to be so we can take this health journey with you, because it is a journey. And don't forget to share this episode with someone that you're going to take on the journey with you. Maybe it's a partner, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a child, whoever it is that needs to, or a parent that needs to go on this journey with you. Share this episode with them. You can have them visit winmakegive.com, or you could just have them text the word podcast to 59559. Have them text podcast to 59559, and they'll get a link. They'll be able to find this episode that we just had here, Jillene and I. Until our next episode, Jillene, I want to thank you on behalf of our audience and on Ben and Bob for not having to be here for a health conversation. Folks, remember, wash those hands, and as always, do good.